So that's what it feels like to be stimulated by a movie that treats both its audience and characters with respect and dignity. With the latest shortcomings from the Marvel brand, it's fair to say that the majority of the fanbase has had quite enough of their bullshit and started actively looking for a lifeboat quicker than the guests of the Titanic.
He's out of line, but he's right.
And once people saw the steady decline of a once burgeoning empire for superhero storytelling succumb to cheap, lazy, unimaginative, corporately designed drivel written by talentless hacks that aim to expand the mind with about as much intrigue as taking a class in how to light up your own farts, it was a safe bet to anyone with more than the 2 brain cells that comprised the She-Hulk writing team we were set to see the end of this. But wouldn't you know, Marvel has been cast another lifeline.
Why won't you die?
With both the Guardians Volume 3 and Across the Spider-Verse already seeing steady returns for the brand in their final hour, and it's sorely fucking needed by the looks of it. But aside from the commercial concerns regarding this title, the question comes down to, is it a worthy successor? And in my humble opinion, yes.
Oh, thank goodness.
I can't recall the last time I witnessed a movie that works as diligently as this one does to present a smooth, organic and intelligent continuation of its highly revered predecessor and not cave to the expectations. In short, Across the Spider-Verse is quite honestly a fantastic but busy movie. And I don't just mean the densely packed visuals that felt like they were overcompensated from the last one carrying a degree of finesse to it, or the combination of music and dialogue that left me scratching my head at points as to what the fuck was going on, but the kind of busy work that's done to fill out a 2-parter, with a lot of the latest inductees to the Spider-Verse being afforded time to flesh out all of what we see, as a few in particular really undergo a journey of self-discovery and crisis of identity for what it means to truly be Spider-Man or Spider-Woman. And while it may feel devoid of purpose for some, and I can certainly see why you'd feel that way, it's all done to explore the outlandish concept of a multiverse and how it operates with consequence to the wider narrative and personal struggles of all involved. And in my mind, with what we saw done here, it will allow Beyond the Spider-Verse to truly get into the meat of the story. Now, I'll be honest, my degree of understanding for Spider-Man is greatly limited to what I've seen on the screen. I've watched every Spider-Man movie from the past 20 years and I've dipped into the occasional animated piece, but as far as any form of literacy goes, that eludes me about as much as my understanding for how to function as a fucking human being.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know how this machine worked.
So my assessments for Miles Morales are severely limited given my exposure to him goes as far as the 2018 Spider-Man game and the first Spider-Verse movie. But from just those entries alone, I do find Miles to be an endearing character with relatable qualities that borrows aspects from Peter Parker but otherwise is his own entity. He's a mature and young man who's saddled with expectation and heavy responsibility, undergoing the same journey we've seen from previous Spider-Men that often struggle with balancing personal ambition and the life of a hero. The latter of which becomes the heart of this movie as Miles needs to make a choice by the end that could impact the very fabric of the multiverse.
I'm sorry, you're saying there's a multiverse?
Now, I'm going to be discussing spoiler-based content from here onwards, so if you haven't seen this yet, it's probably best you get the fuck out of here and come back to check out my thoughts later. Or if you don't care and you have seen it, then continue on, my dear viewer. The movie picks up a little over a year after the events of the first one, where life has seemingly gotten worse for both Gwen and Miles, as there's a longing to be reunited with each other throughout this. But the responsibilities of being a hero and life in general is preventing them from truly processing their feelings and expressing themselves in healthy ways. Gwen has become more agitated and closed off with tensions building between her and her father, while Miles has resorted to lying and prioritising his superhero life in place of anything academically like his parents want for him. And after a few escapades on both worlds that lands them in a spot of bother,
See what you did there?
their worlds collide as Gwen is recruited to a secret society of spider people that protect other realities from a growing threat originating on Miles' world, with the Bagel Bop guy from the previous movie being turned into an interdimensional being thanks to Kingpin's super collider going off, that Miles treats as a joke initially in this. The two reunite as a result of Gwen's investigation to track down Miles' new adversary, but she allows Spot to get away, having prioritised her relationship with Miles over him. Afterwards, she's instructed to continue the chase and ditch Miles for good, only for our dear Spidey to follow her and is cast into the multiverse in doing so. Once they've arrived on the other side, they find themselves on Spider-Man India's Earth, where the Spot seeks another super collider to begin his ascent to power so he'll be taken more seriously as a villain and take from Miles what he believes Miles took from him.
Well, that's fucking
Not good.
After Spider-Man India's Earth starts to succumb to the effects of the Spot's actions, members of the Spider Society show up to try and control the situation as Miles and the others are escorted to the hub at which every Spider person can access. After a few cameos and long-winded expositions, Miles meets Miguel O'Hara, or Spider-Man 2099, who runs this organization as punishment for tampering with multiversal law, where one universe lost its own Miguel and he stepped in to have his family back, but the result of this cost that reality everything.
God, you're making me beat up Graham!
So it's become Miguel's mission to stop anything from disrupting the canon ever again, and in this case, Miles is part of the problem. After stopping Spider-Man India's police captain from dying, Miguel informs him that there are moments within every reality for Spider-Man that are constant, or canon, and must occur for that reality's Spider-Man or Spider-Woman to rise up. And that aside from that misstep, the canon corruption here regarding Miles is he was never meant to become Spider-Man.
Not true. That's impossible!
As we find out in that moment of Kingpin's Super Collider activating for the first time, it took Earth 42's Spider away from creating that world's Spider-Man, meaning it fell into disarray. And for the canon to course correct, Miles as Peter Parker had to die to allow for Miles Morales to become the world's new Spider-Man, so the fabric of the very multiverse didn't split apart. However, because of the unintended consequences of Kingpin's actions, Miles will never be deemed a true Spider-Man in Miguel's eyes until he's undergone the same course of events that every other Spider-Man has to, and that's to lose either a love interest, uncle, or police captain, which in Miles' universe is about to be his father.
You serious?
And the result of his death will be at the hands of the Spot, following the two becoming mentally entangled after the Spot entered the second Super Collider and allowed for Miles to see his intentions, meaning the joke of a villain we began with is now Miles' greatest adversary.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
For events to unfold and reset the balance, Miguel imprisons Miles, but thanks to Spider-Punk, he manages to escape, and a frantic, frenzied chase begins across the hub with every Spider-Person attempting to capture him, with both Peter B. Parker and Gwen trying to help Miles out. But feeling betrayed by them for both knowing that he was an accident and never telling him, he rejects them for now. And right as Miguel manages to catch up to him and tries to subdue him, Miles actually planned to lead the entire Spider Society away from the hub to evade them, where he manages to return to the central console and inputs the coordinates to return home and save his father. However, we find out in the end that in his haste to get back so quickly, Miles was sent to the Spider's original reality that bit him, being confronted with his Uncle Aaron and that world's Miles Morales becoming the Prowler. And then we close on Gwen being rejected from the Spider Society, and thanks to an assist from Spider-Punk, is able to recruit a group of friends, including a returning Peter Parker, Penny Parker, and Spider-Man Noir, to go in search of Miles among the multiverse, while Miguel, Jessica Drew, and the Scarlet Spider go to Miles' reality to ensure he doesn't interfere with his father's death.
And don't you dare intercut this with footage of me freaking out!
Now, for the purposes of that breakdown, I left out a fair bit of fluff that indulges die-hard Spider-Man fans and hardcore Marvel audiences, but from just those details alone, it's fair to say that this movie goes hard. It doesn't glorify anything that isn't necessary, only passing the spotlight over them while we follow the core cast. Nothing feels overtly drawn out or long-winded, except maybe Miles' personal strifes, while both Gwen and Miguel's backstories are explained with concise recounting of everything that you need to know. And ultimately, this one isn't afraid to torment its characters either, with Gwen, Miles and Miguel's tribulations being entangled with the wider concerns of the multiverse, which makes the stakes feel more alive and engaging when you realise there are high consequences for everyone else on the back of this of what they do and don't do.
These are dark times, there is no denying.
The incredible thing as well though is that they all have understandable motivations for their actions, which are necessities to generate a connection with your audience, which is something a lot of the MCU's attempts to achieve have lost on. Without the success of No Way Home and in my opinion Marvel's What If, both Loki, Ant-Man 3 and Doctor Strange 2 really failed to execute the complex, multifaceted concepts that they were trying to rationalise in an intelligent and meaningful way, for which this movie really manages to achieve. The unique qualities to each Spider-Person we're introduced to beyond a mere mention or cursory glance at really packs out this movie as well, with personal drama, emotional weight and great attention that is all presented and explained in a respectful, nuanced and engaging manner.
Good job.
The fascinating aspect to this entire plot is it hinges on the understanding that every Spider-Person must experience the same tragic events across the multiverse for the canon to continue, essentially deeming every reality as a constant with only the relationship changing to influence Spider-Man's trajectory. So it brings an interesting question in my mind, and that's how will this affect Miles' journey going forward to the conclusion of all this? Is it possible for Miles to avoid fate and continue with Spider-Man, or is he destined to align with every other Spider-Person in the multiverse that have had to endure those life-changing events necessary to progress them as the heroes they're meant to be?
With great power comes great responsibility.
As by the end as well, we're left with a bleak conclusion for all involved, a slew of questions and only a slither of hope that our intrepid heroes can achieve what they need to try and combat what's set to tear the Spider-Verse apart. Speaking of that very threat, the Spot was a very interesting concept that I'd love to see the potential of, as his very existence is, like I said, linked to Miles's, and the two were a result of each other. The background to the Spot is amusing but also tragic, as you realise that he doesn't start off as the antagonist we end with, but instead is a desperate loser who was an accident as a result of an accident. The guy was handed a shit card, and because of Miles teasing him rather than trying to reason with him until it was too late, he made things far worse than they ever needed to be.
Who's the dumbass?
Whoa! Hey, how about a little professional courtesy here?
What's that, dumbass?
Say it again.
You want me to?
I dare you.
Dumbass.
I can't imagine that things would have escalated to the degree they did, despite how the Spot felt towards Spider-Man, but it's a solid reminder of the message to this movie that actions do indeed have consequences. And as for the man looking to resolve this whole situation, Miguel O'Hara was executed brilliantly, with Oscar Isaac bringing it for the role, and while we understand what made his character, there's still so much I'd love to unpack about him, and what he's had to do over the years as this morally ambiguous character, and I'm excited to see what his involvement will look like in the follow-up. Jessica Drew was just kind of there for me. There wasn't really anything compelling or need to know about her, as was Spider-Bite. Spider-Punk felt like a living meme with a lot of the language he used, but was still an enjoyable presence who could become a star player in the final film, and Spider-Man India genuinely surprised me as this wholesome comedic character who echoes the audience's feelings upon meeting Gwen and Miles. All of them were perfectly likeable, with none of the self-indulgent nonsense that makes a character in modern movies these days, but instead all of them had their own personalities and qualities that were personal distinctions rather than having separate outfits and voices to separate them all. But it has to be said, my shining star from this movie was Gwanda. She seriously stepped up compared to her appearance in the last film, and is admittedly still the love interest for Miles, but now has definition, agency, a life of her own. And that's not to say that the first movie didn't do her justice, but there's a whole new identity to her here that feels defined and relatable. She wants to find her band, her family in another world, her purpose in life, and she still wants Miles, but is afraid of what could happen after losing Peter in her universe, for whom she became very attached to. She's endearing, capable and charming throughout this, and doesn't detract from the focus of the story or Miles' personal journey either, but instead adds to it all and will play a huge role, I believe, in supporting Miles as we seemingly close out our time with this lot.
My emotions! My emotions!
And as for our titled hero, Miles' journey is rich and thought-provoking as you start to consider what his life would have looked like, or what he would have become had the spider not found him. I love the take on Miles' origins as to make him an accident that actually has done a lot of good in the universe, and it might have come at the cost of his world's Peter Parker and another world's Miles Morales, but you have to wonder, based on the imagery we saw of who that spider was set to bite on Earth 42, we have to safely assume that a Miles Morales was always intended to be created if we follow the logic of canon, and that every Earth has a predeterminant to it, and that maybe Miles was a necessary inclusion among the universes for his approach to being a hero. But also, interestingly, on Earth 42, there's absolutely no mention of a Peter Parker there, so I guess Miles was the only option for Spider-Man, unless there was another name from the comics that I'm not aware of that could have worked. But his worldviews carry a deeper significance and relevance for him to go on this journey and inspire others in a way that Peter Parker wouldn't or hasn't. And we know now with our Miles, he was never intended to be the one, but what if he was actually the better choice for Miles in the multiverse than what Earth 42 could have wound up with?
He's got a point.
The way we end with Miles on Earth 42 as well though was delivered in a way that was supposed to be surprising for most, but for me was actually pretty noticeable upon seeing the screen with his destination on it, which I think they personally should have avoided completely to big up that tension and allow audiences to figure it out for themselves, or put it in the background of that moment for eagle-eyed viewers to spot. But Miles being confronted by his uncle and alternate self genuinely got me, even though I saw it coming. I love seeing alternate takes on popular characters, as I think many do, as it offers the chance for a fresh perspective perspective or different takes to occur without affecting the version that we all know and love, and let's be honest, it's a fucking market draw too.
I smell profit.
But to spin it so Miles on Earth 42 never became Spider-Man and instead became the villain, with that Earth never being offered an assist from a Spider-Man entirely, presents an interesting dynamic for the culmination of the story and conversation I can't wait to see, should Miles be able to work things out here. So as I wrap up here, my feelings are that you should absolutely go out of your way to check this one out. It's an excellent continuation and worthy successor to its predecessor, with multiple threads all entangled with each other, accompanied by a vast array of characters with uniquely different art styles, voices, personalities and backgrounds, all coming together like a web to create a mature, thoughtful, breezy, heartfelt and complex piece of storytelling that honestly is leagues above anything that Disney Marvel is shitting out. It's a tightly wrapped, considerate, artistic and practical take as well that rationalises the very concept that the MCU had failed to fully interpret outside of, ironically, a Spider-Man movie, and becomes an intensely personal affair for Miles with a compelling take on his origins and a hell of a plot twist by the end that really sets the course for Beyond the Spider-Verse, set to arrive in 2024, that I'll eagerly be sat waiting for. And whilst this movie, as I said, does a lot of stimulating busy work, compared to the bland, generic, soulless, shameless remakes of Disney, it's almost refreshing. And with the reception to this, it's clear what people want more of now. So maybe it's time for those corporate fuckheads to pull their heads out their arses and give audiences a reason to come out and actually support them.
You serious?
That's gonna do it for me though. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you like what you saw here, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more down the road. And until next time everyone, take care, and I will see you soon.